Hello, this is Riss here, and if you think Love in Deep Space is just a romance game, you're already missing the truth. On this channel, I break down the real story, the hidden lore, the symbolism, and the deeper connections behind every scene. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button for more deep dives. In this video, I'm diving deep into Rafayel's Anecdotes, and trust me, these aren't just cute side stories. We're breaking down what they actually mean, the symbolism, the patterns, and the hidden details that connect everything together. Across unfinished work, missing color, and passionate colors, Rafayel's story shows that his struggle is not about artistic skill, but about emotional authenticity. In unfinished work, he is unable to complete his most important painting and instead isolates himself, building structures out of fish bones. This reflects emotional avoidance and fragmentation. He cannot access the internal state needed to create, which is why he says the painting is missing a color. This missing color is not literal, but represents something deeper within him that he cannot currently reach. In Missing Color, this idea develops further as Rafayel searches for that color, but rejects all artificial or mass-produced options, insisting that anything chosen countless times cannot be used. This shows that he is not looking for just any solution, but for something real and meaningful, something tied to genuine emotion or experience. Finally, in Passionate Colors, the difference between Rafayel and other artists becomes clear. Even when another artist produces a visually similar painting, Rafayel's work is still considered more powerful because it carries emotional depth, while the other artist's red is off, lacking true feeling. Together, these three anecdotes reveal that Rafayel's art comes from an internal emotional source that cannot be copied or replaced. His missing color represents authenticity, and until he can access that genuine emotion, he cannot complete his work. Across Carefree Painter, Drastic Measures, and A Unique Legend, we start to really understand how Rafayel thinks about art. He doesn't care about fame, money, or even what tools he's using. When someone asks him what brand of paint he uses, he's literally confused because that's not how he sees art at all. For him, everything comes from inside, his thoughts, his feelings, his experiences. That's why he makes his own colors instead of copying what other people do. Then in Drastic Measures, he goes even further and literally goes to the ocean to find the color he needs. He uses a conch shell to try to create it, which shows that his color isn't something you can just buy. It has to come from something real, something natural, something that actually means something. And the fact that it takes so long just shows that creating something real isn't easy. It takes time and effort. Finally, in A Unique Legend, everything comes together. He creates this rare color, Tyrian purple, but people can't even tell the difference between his and regular paint. But to Rafayel, the difference isn't how it looks, it's where it came from. His color is special because it's real and rare, not something made in a factory. That's what makes his work valuable. And this connects directly to the memory Miss C Lament. The conch shell isn't just something he uses for art. It becomes something way more personal. When he gives it to MC and tells her to use it to call him, it turns into a symbol of connection. Just like he uses the conch to create something real in his art, MC uses it to reach him in a real way. It shows that Rafayel doesn't respond to surface level things. He responds to something deeper and genuine. So honestly, his missing color isn't just about art, it's about connection. Just like he needs something real to finish his painting, he also needs something real emotionally, and that's where MC comes in. Now let's look into Addictive Paint annotations. Ignition, Another Disguise, and A New Player. Across the first three anecdotes, Rafayel's story quietly reveals that what looks like coincidence is actually something long planned and deeply personal. In Addictive Pain, he is introduced as composed and distant, but his inner world tells a different story. When he describes his feelings as something like spice smeared on your hand on the tip of your tongue, he shows that what he experiences isn't just emotional, it's physical and overwhelming. He refuses to define it clearly, ending instead with the truth. It is an addictive, painful kind. This establishes that he is already affected by a connection he cannot ignore, one that both hurts him and draws him in. Then, in another disguise, that feeling turns into action. Surrounded by countless invitations, he ignores everything until one detail stops him. University. She should still be a college student. This line reveals that he already knows who he is looking for. He deliberately inserts himself into her world, taking on a role and moving through the campus in secret, thinking about how to approach her without drawing attention. Even when questioned publicly, he doesn't deny her presence, simply answering maybe, showing that she is real to him, even if he refuses to fully reveal it. By the time we reach a new player, the tone shifts completely, exposing a more calculating side of Rafayel. He is no longer just searching, he is operating within a larger system. Others are watching her, and he is informed that the threads of fate have already spun a web around her. Yet he responds without urgency because he's been in the game since the beginning. This confirms that his connection to her is not recent. He has been involved long before this moment. His protectiveness also becomes clear when he warns, "I believe I told you not to approach her," and then destroys all evidence of her, ensuring that no one else can interfere. Together, these three anecdotes show a complete progression. Rafayel begins with an unexplained but powerful emotional pull, then actively searches for its source and finally reveals that he has been part of her story all along. What seems like a chance encounter is actually something intentional. He felt her first, then found her, and has been shaping the situation around her from the very beginning. Across bait, unexpected encounter, and a perfect opportunity, Rafayel's story shifts from controlled pursuit into something much deeper: obsession, recognition, and emotional reconstruction. In Bait, Rafayel frames the entire situation using ocean imagery, seeing everyone as a school of fish, while identifying her specifically as bait, disguised as a tiny red fish. This reveals that she is not only the center of attention, but also a trigger that draws in danger from others and from himself. He acknowledges that approaching her carelessly would make him prey, showing that she is the one thing capable of destabilizing him. Even so, he chooses patience, admitting he is willing to spend the rest of his days with her, and that the pain tied to her is undeniably painful, yet addictive, directly connecting back to his earlier emotional state. In Unexpected Encounter, that tension finally breaks into reality when he finds her. The moment he hears her voice, every word strikes like a drumbeat, awakening memories he has kept for years, and he recognizes her instantly, so many years later, while she remains unaware of him. This creates an imbalance where he remembers everything and she remembers nothing, leading him to walk away, not out of disinterest, but because the connection is no longer shared. By a perfect opportunity, Rafayel begins trying to process and rebuild that connection through his art. He paints using sensation rather than tools, explaining that spiciness is a sensation similar to painting, and that color is also a sensation, showing that his emotions, especially the pain tied to her, are something he physically experiences and translates into his work. The repeated focus on red, heat, and spice reinforces that she has become the emotional color he is trying to recreate. However, his work remains incomplete as he admits his paint is still not properly mixed, symbolizing that the connection is still one-sided and unresolved. Together, these three anecdotes show Rafayel moving from calculated control to emotional confrontation to an attempt at reconstruction. He knows she is the one who affects him. He finds her again, but because she does not remember him, he is left trying to recreate something real that he can feel but cannot yet fully reach. Across Cliffhanger, Stage Manager, and The Fourth Wall, the narrative of Rafayel is carefully constructed to reveal a hidden truth beneath performance, rumor, and observation. What initially appears to be a dramatic opera storyline gradually unfolds into a layered exploration of identity, control, trauma, and perception. These stories are not separate events, but parts of a single progression: how Rafayel hides his true nature, how the world misinterprets it, and how he ultimately controls the boundary between illusion and reality. The story begins with Cliffhanger, where the opera siren's song presents a tragic narrative between Maverick and the siren. On the surface, this appears to be a fictional tale of love, betrayal, and revenge. Maverick approaches the siren despite knowing she destroyed his life, sings the very song she taught him, and ultimately kills her in a moment that blends intimacy with violence. However, the most important detail is that this fictional performance mirrors reality. A man in the audience, Mr. Fallon, dies under mysterious circumstances during the show. This immediately collapses the boundary between stage and reality, suggesting that what is being performed is not merely symbolic, it is reflective of something real. The line, "Finally, he can be himself," spoken when Raphael steps backstage, reveals the central truth of this chapter. The performer seen by the audience is not the real Raphael. Instead, the version behind the stage, the one who enacted the story, is closer to his true self. The opera becomes a controlled confession, where Raphael expresses his nature through art while hiding it behind the illusion of performance. Thus, Cliffhanger establishes the first major idea. Raphael uses performance to reveal truth while disguising it as fiction. In the fourth wall, the perspective shifts again, this time to Louis, a detective investigating the incident. This change is crucial because it allows the audience to see Raphael from the outside, through the eyes of someone attempting to understand him. The official explanation for Mr. Fallon's death is illness, but Louis recognizes that something is wrong. As he investigates further, he begins to view Raphael not as a suspect, but as a worthy adversary. This shift is significant because it acknowledges Raphael's intelligence, awareness, and ability to operate beyond normal human limitations. The most important moment occurs when Louis follows Raphael, believing he is unseen and in control. However, Raphael suddenly vanishes and confronts him directly with the line, "Speak, why are you following me?" This moment completely reverses the power dynamic. It reveals that Raphael was aware of Louis the entire time and allowed himself to be followed. Louis was never truly observing Raphael, he was being allowed to observe him. The title, The Fourth Wall, reinforces this concept. In storytelling, the fourth wall separates the audience from the narrative. Raphael exists on both sides of this boundary. He is part of the story, but also controls how it is perceived. He decides what is shown, what is hidden, and when the illusion breaks. Thus, this chapter establishes the third major idea. Raphael does not merely exist within the story, he controls how the story is seen. In improv, the narrative presents Raphael's truth indirectly through the voice of Louis, who reconstructs his story using myth rather than accusation. Instead of confronting Raphael with evidence, Louis tells a version of a siren legend, gradually reshaping it into something more precise, more disturbing, and closer to reality. The siren is no longer an enchantress, but a victim, captured, stripped of his scales, and left to die. This reversal is critical, as it reframes Raphael not as a predator by nature, but as someone who was first subjected to violence and loss. As Louis continues, the story deepens. The siren returns home to find his kingdom destroyed, his people gone, and his world reduced to ruin. The name Lemuria is spoken aloud, marking the moment where myth collapses into truth. Raphael's silence in response is not denial, but confirmation. He does not correct Louis because the story has already reached its intended target. The most important revelation comes not from Louis, but from Raphael himself. When asked how the siren would take revenge, Raphael answers he would learn from them and study their cruelty. This line defines his character. Raphael is not driven by uncontrolled rage or impulsive vengeance. Instead, he is methodical. He observes, adapts, and internalizes the very systems that harmed him. Revenge for him is not an emotional outburst, it is a calculated process. Thus, improv establishes the foundation of his identity. Raphael is a survivor who has turned understanding into a weapon. If improv reveals what happened, a one-man show reveals what it did to him. Here, the narrative turns inward, stripping away all external perspectives and exposing Raphael's internal state. The imagery is no longer controlled or symbolic, it is overwhelming, fragmented, and raw. He hears the cries of his people as if they are still happening, feels himself dragged downward by unseen forces, and experiences a constant sense of being submerged. This is not memory as something distant, it is memory as something ongoing. The introduction of Kay, a Lemurian survivor who has been tortured and stripped of his identity, provides a concrete representation of what Lemuria's destruction truly meant. Kay's declaration, "I'm no longer Lemurian," reveals that the loss was not only physical, but existential. Lemuria's people were not simply killed, they were altered, broken, and erased. The sea moon ceremony, in which Kay is returned to the sea, represents the Lemurian acceptance of death as a return to their origin. Yet Raphael cannot accept this. While others find peace in the ritual, he remains unable to let go. This inability becomes the defining feature of his character. Where others release the past, Raphael holds on to it. His promise, "I'll bring everyone home," is the emotional and narrative center of the chapter. This is not a statement of revenge alone. It is a declaration of responsibility, of refusal to accept loss as final. It reveals that Raphael's actions are not driven by destruction, but by an attempt, however impossible, to restore what has been taken. The title, A One-Man Show, underscores this burden. Raphael is alone in carrying this responsibility. He does not share his grief, nor does he allow others to participate in it. Everything he does is self-contained, self-directed, and ultimately isolating. Thus, a one-man show reveals the core truth. Raphael is not defined by revenge, but by a grief he refuses to release. In next performance, the focus shifts once more from internal struggle to external action. Having revealed his past and emotional state, the story now shows what Raphael chooses to do with that knowledge. The chapter opens with Louis once again arriving too late. Raphael has already left, boarding a ship and departing without confrontation. This reinforces a consistent pattern. Raphael is always ahead, not because he escapes, but because he controls the timing of every interaction. As the ship travels across the ocean, the world continues to react to his presence. The lingering effects of his performance are evident in the broadcast calls from citizens who remain captivated, even disturbed by what they experience. This demonstrates that Raphael's influence extends beyond immediate action. His presence leaves lasting impressions on those who encounter it. One of the most significant moments occurs when Raphael burns the documents Louis compiled. This act is not driven by panic or fear, but by intention. He allows Louis to gather information, to construct a narrative, and then erases it completely. This reveals a crucial aspect of his strategy. Unlike the documents, which he destroys without hesitation, this object is preserved. This distinction is critical. The documents represent knowledge, investigation, and external truth, things Raphael is willing to erase. The photograph represents something personal, something emotional, something he cannot discard. Thus, next performance reveals the final layer of his character. Raphael moves forward with purpose, but he does not leave everything behind. Together, these three chapters form a complete narrative arc. Improv reveals the truth of Raphael's past. A one-man show exposes the emotional impact of that past. Next performance shows how he chooses to act on it. Through this progression, Raphael emerges as a character defined by contradiction. He is both deeply emotional and rigorously controlled, both a victim of loss and an agent of calculated action. His journey is not one of simple revenge, but of navigating the tension between memory and purpose. Ultimately, these stories reveal that Raphael's defining trait is not his power, his mystery, or even his trauma. It is his refusal to let the past disappear. Everything he does is shaped by that refusal, whether it manifests as strategy, isolation, or quiet acts of preservation.